The stars thinned as the fleet crossed the heliopause and entered the quiet light of a yellow sun. Commander Varakesh watched the system unfold with the confidence of someone who believed nothing here could matter. 43 ships formed a perfect crescent around his flagship, hulls glowing with the hardened sheen earned through 47 successful conquests. Every officer on the command tier carried that number like a crown. Every voice carried the assumption that humanity would crumble like the others. The first scan returned a map of the inner orbits. Small worlds, thin atmospheres, crude satellites that flickered with carrier wave communications. Varakesh lifted a brow at the streams of radio noise drifting outward from the third planet. Entertainment transmissions, music, debates, weather. He heard a laugh behind him as his tactical officer isolated a signal of two humans arguing about soil prices, primitive, complacent, unaware. More data scrolled in. The planet's defensive grid was weak. Point defense banks were few and scattered, no orbiting war platforms, no deep space patrol lines, no standing fleet beyond a handful of escort ships hugging the orbital plane like frightened children clutching a shoreline. Varakesh recorded the moment for later presentation. Conquest number 48 would be the easiest in a century. He ordered a slow advance to the inner system. The fleet glided past the ice bodies with engines dark, running in a formation taut through half a millennium of expansion. Already, officers were drafting the first messages they would broadcast to the human government. Conditional surrender terms, resource levies, migration quotas. It was routine. The Empire had done this for 412 worlds and refined the process to a science. A junior sensor officer reported faint heat signatures near the asteroid belt. Varakesh dismissed them. Mining drones, nothing capable of resisting a vessel longer than one of their cities. Another officer noted that the moon of the third planet carried unusual industrial scars, deep trenches, strange reflective panels, irregular grid lines. Again, Varakesh dismissed it. A civilization this young scratches at stone and calls it progress. That earned the expected ripple of amusement across the deck. He stepped closer to the forward display as the orbit of the third planet brightened on their projection. Surface structures spiked in metallic density, but nothing suggested a military core, no antimatter signatures, no planetary shields, no weaponized gravity wells. For a moment, he imagined the admiration the humans would feel when the fleet entered their sky. 43 Imperial hulls arranged across a span of 19,000 kilometers, each one capable of reducing continents to negotiation tables. "We will give them a moment to witness greatness," Varakesh said, voice smooth with practiced triumph. A stinger line pulsed through his thoughts. "They think we are their horizon." He ordered a low-intensity power bloom across the fleet to signal presence. Brilliant blue runes flared along the hulls, cascading in perfect sequence. An imperial tradition that signaled the opening chapter of conquest. On every world before this one, the display alone had sparked surrender. Officers began timing the moment. How long before humanity understood the futility? The seconds stretched, no answer came. Instead, a soft band of human transmissions rolled past their sensors. Weather reports, ocean data, a school lesson about orbital mechanics. Not a single distress call. Not a single military broadcast. Not even a panicked acknowledgement of their presence. Humanity seemed unaware that an empire capable of crushing planets in hours had arrived at its door. Varakesh tasted irritation. "They do not recognize authority." His adjutant responded with an easy confidence. "They will." The fleet shifted into a slow arc toward the moon, preparing for the formal demand broadcast. Officers rehearsed their lines, historical citations, the calibrated tone that had compelled entire civilizations to deliver their resources without resistance. It was the same tone the Empire had used for 5 centuries. Cold, imperial, mathematically certain. But as the ships drifted closer, an unfamiliar quiet settled across the command deck. The moon's odd industrial scars sharpened on the display. They aligned into vectors, grids, geometric patterns too exact for mining, too deliberate for chance. A design lay beneath the dust. Varakesh leaned forward. "What is that?" No one answered. The fleet continued its elegant descent through the system, unaware that its confidence was being measured, catalogued, and quietly returned. They believed they had arrived as rulers. They never considered they had been expected. The silence of the inner planets held the moment, waiting for the first misstep. The demand broadcast rolled across every Imperial channel with the weight of tradition. Precise phrasing, ceremonial cadence, the promise of inevitable subjugation. Commander Varakesh stood at the center of his bridge as the message streamed toward Earth, framed by the 43 ships arranged in a perfect crescent. His officers waited for the usual chain of events: panic, scrambling diplomats, desperate negotiations. Conquest always began with noise from the target world. Instead, Earth answered with a single line: "We acknowledge your message. Stand by. No fear, no excuses, no outrage. Just a calm sentence delivered in a tone that treated the Empire's ultimatum as if it were an unexpected scheduling request." Varakesh felt the first flicker of annoyance. He ordered the second transmission sent. Full surrender terms, detailed consequences. The standard economic directives that had worked on dozens of species. It was a speech polished over 500 years. Again, Earth responded. Same steady cadence. Same centered control. Your terms are noted. A formal response is being prepared. Maintain your current position. Do not escalate. The bridge shifted. Officers exchanged looks. This was not the progression they knew. There should have been fear by now. There should have been confusion. Instead, the humans were telling them not to escalate. Varakesh kept his expression still, though irritation pressed at the edges of his composure. "Open a real-time channel," he said. The connection formed, but instead of a face or council chamber, the feed displayed a dark room with a single line of white text drifting across the lower frame: Earth Orbital Negotiation Relay. No symbols of power, no ceremonial display. Just a stripped interface that carried a subtle, unsettling message. "We don't need theatrics to speak to you," a voice emerged, neutral and steady. "Imperial Fleet, your presence has been logged. No hostile action will be taken against you. Unless you initiate it. System protocols have been updated. Please maintain orbit. Maintain orbit, not stand down, not surrender." Simply an instruction delivered as though Earth had every right to dictate movement to a 43-ship armada. A stinger line cut the silence. Calm is not weakness. Varakesh requested planetary data again. The scans had not changed. No shields, no planetary artillery, no visible shipyards capable of generating real resistance. And yet the humans spoke as if they had leverage. His adjutant leaned close. "Sir, this may be an attempt at appearing composed, a final performance before collapse. Perhaps." But something about the tone lingered beneath the words. Controlled, measured, not posturing but prepared. Varakesh initiated the intimidation phase, an old, reliable tactic. All 43 ships powered up their frontal arrays. Hull glyphs flared. A synchronized engine surge lit the void with blue-white fire. The fleet's presence became a wall of light over the moon. Earth replied immediately. "Power displays are unnecessary. Your energy output has been recorded. Please reduce emissions to safe thresholds for surrounding satellites." The bridge froze. They were being scolded. Varakesh forced his jaw still. "Transmit that escalation is imminent unless they comply." The human voice returned within seconds. "Escalation is not advised. System integrity fields are active. We prefer peaceful dialogue. System integrity fields." The phrase was unfamiliar. Officers ran quick scans. Nothing appeared. Still no shields, no defense platforms, no plasma barriers. Yet something had changed in the telemetry. Subtle variances across the inner system, faint distortions near the moon, irregular gravitic ripples near Mars, low-frequency pulses from the asteroid belt. Nothing weaponized, nothing obvious, but all of it synchronized with Earth's last message, hidden protocols. Varakesh's irritation sharpened into caution. "Locate the source." The sensor officer worked in silence, eyes narrowing as readouts shifted. "Sir, these signatures aren't local to one point. They're networked. The moon, Mars, several asteroids. Energy levels remain low. but the timing aligns within 0.04 seconds across multiple bodies. Impossible for a primitive world. Another line appeared on the feed. Our system is now in protected mode. We recommend you hold position. Protected mode. The phrase carried no hostility, no raised voice. Just clarity, confidence, a quiet assertion that something larger had awakened under the surface of this seemingly fragile system. Varakesh ordered a third intimidation surge. 2 ships brightened their arrays, then flickered. Power dropped by 13% without warning. Instrument panels dimmed. The ships drifted for 4 seconds before their cores stabilized. Silence crushed the bridge. The human voice returned, still maddeningly calm. Please avoid electromagnetic surges near protected bodies. Automatic dampeners will compensate. No damage has occurred. Automatic dampeners. They were being corrected again. His officers waited for his reaction. Varakesh forced stillness. Send final demand. Full compliance within 1 hour, Earth replied. Your demand is acknowledged. 1 hour is acceptable. We will respond at the designated time. Please remain in non-threatening posture until the AI discussion concludes. Varakesh stepped back from the display, the weight of the moment settling. The humans were not afraid. They were not impressed. They were not even hurried. They were managing the situation. The first hint of unease threaded through the Imperial command tier as the fleet held position over the moon, unaware that a deeper network across the system had already shifted from quiet observation into activation. The hour began ticking down, and Earth waited for them without a tremor. The order to fire was delivered with the certainty of a ritual. Commander Varakesh stood at the apex of his command tier as the strike sequence unfolded across 43 ships, each reactor rising through its calibrated stages. The fleet had waited the full hour Earth requested, interpreting the humans' calm as stalling. No surrender had arrived. No plea. No negotiation. Only silence. Silence was insolence. Primary arrays to full, Varakesh said. Energy built in, waves. Blue radiance crawled along Imperial hulls. Target locks settled across the third planet's orbital shell, aimed not at cities or civilians, but at a precise arc near the moon. A warning strike, standard doctrine. Terrify, do not destroy. Demonstrate power, then open the door to compliance. Fire, 43 beams converged into a single descending lance of light. The barrage crossed 300,000 kilometers in under a second. A coherent wall of pressure, heat, and authority, meant to shatter whatever illusions Earth held. The impact never came. The beam reached a point 12 kilometers above the lunar surface, flared, then folded inward as if swallowed by an unseen throat. Light vanished, heat vanished. The shockwave that should have rippled across the moon's regolith never formed. Nothing burned, nothing shook, nothing responded. The beam simply ceased to exist. A pulse of quiet gravity rippled outward from the target point, soft enough to register but harmless. The lunar grid, a network no Imperial scan had detected, absorbed the strike without a flicker. A stinger line formed in the silence. Your weapons mean nothing here. Varakesh leaned forward. Replay impact telemetry. The feed rewound. The diagram traced the beam's trajectory. At the moment of contact, space around the target flexed, not bent, not shielded, flexed. A controlled gravitational inversion collapsed the energy inward, dispersing it as... He zoomed the data. Thermal noise spread over 4,000 square kilometers without surpassing 0.4 degam. Impossible. His tactical officer swallowed hard. Sir, our beam output measured at full strength. There was no resistance, no counterfire, no dissipation. It looked like it was taken. Taken, Varakesh opened system-wide scans. Lunar readings changed, subtly but undeniably. A vine lattice of microstructures shimmered beneath the regolith, dozens of kilometers wide, forming angular patterns that aligned with the gravitational pulse. Patterns his fleet had never seen. He activated deep penetration scans. They bounced, backscattered like dust against a wall. A soft chime signaled an incoming transmission. Earth's voice returned, measured, steady, still maddeningly calm. Your strike has been absorbed safely. No harm has occurred to lunar facilities or personnel. We request that you cease further discharge. Please maintain distance from the designated zone. Absorbed safely. Personnel. They had people on the moon. Human civilians living beneath the surface that had taken the Empire's full barrage without noticing it. Varakesh's jaw tightened. Prepare second volley. Double power. I want to overwhelm whatever shield they... He stopped. Not shield. There had been no refractory energy, no barrier signature, no heat reflection. Whatever the humans had activated was not defensive indeed. Anyway, the Empire understood. His adjutant's voice broke the moment. Sir, something else is happening. The moon brightened, faintly, but unnaturally. The scars they had dismissed as primitive mining efforts began emitting structured light, not random, not decorative. A geometric pulse synchronized across 312 segments at intervals of 0.2 seconds, each flash aligned with the fleet's position. The grid wasn't only active, it was watching them. Varakesh zoomed the display. The pattern formed an enormous hexagonal, a ray spanning nearly a quarter of the moon's visible surface. No civilization at this technological level could build something of that scale in secret, unless they had been building it for centuries. Another message arrived. We advise Imperial, command to pause aggressive action. Lunar absorption fields are calibrated to prevent harm to all parties. Automatic protection protocols will remain active as long as necessary. Automatic protection for all parties. His officers shifted uneasily. The Empire had never encountered a species that protected its enemies' lives during a confrontation. Varakesh forced composure. Systems check. Did the impact damage anything? No, sir, replied the engineer, but... He hesitated. There was a return signal. Varakesh turned sharply. Define return. The engineer brought up the waveform. A low frequency, pulse, harmless, yet precise, had traveled from the absorption point back toward the fleet, passing through each ship as if cataloging them. No damage. Just information gathering, sir. They scanned us during the strike. A second stinger line cut through the tension. They let you fire so they could see you. Varakesh looked again at the lunar grid. Silent, steady, patient. The first reversal had already taken place. His fleet had meant to show dominance. Instead, they had revealed weakness. Earth had absorbed the blow, and they had answered without raising their voice. The commander stood motionless as the implications settled across the bridge. Power had shifted, quietly, irreversibly. The moon was awake, the first anomaly registered as a point of distortion, 0.7 kilometers above the Imperial vanguard, so faint the sensors flagged it as background drift. Commander Varakesh ignored it, until the point split, flickered, and unfolded into a sharp-edged silhouette no Imperial scan had tracked on approach. A vessel smaller than a gunship, matte black, angles severe, appeared in the center of the fleet's forward triangle as if it had always belonged there. No warp signature, no thrust trail, no entry vector. It had simply arrived. Identify, Varakesh said, voice steady but clipped. His sensors returned the same impossible answer across all consoles. No match found. The object was 48 meters long, unarmed by all standard metrics, and utterly silent. Not a reactor profile, not a shield. It radiated nothing at all. Before anyone could react, 3 more distortions bloomed. One above the flagship, one beneath the outer formation, one directly behind the artillery line. Each distortion folded inward, like a sheet of dark water turning into itself, revealing another of the black craft. 4 total, inside the fleet's perimeter. Varakesh felt his officer's breath tighten. Reform, he ordered, forcing calm. Box them in. 43 ships shifted in perfect Imperial geometry, except the geometry failed. Every time a vessel adjusted to close a gap, a new fold occurred. Space compressed. Angles shifted by 0.003 degrees. Ranges changed by meters. Then tens of meters, then hundreds. The foreign craft didn't move. Space itself did. A stinger line cut the air. They are already where they need to be. The bridge lights dimmed for a moment as Imperial sensors struggled to quantify the distortions. An engineer stammered, Sir, these are microfolds, not jumps, not warp. Local distortions of 2 to 6 meters at most, microfolding, inside the fleet, without energy signatures. Impossible. Varakesh opened wide-spectrum scans. The black craft returned nothing. It was as if they existed in a thin layer of space that touched the fleet but did not belong to it. Then the first one moved, not with thrust, not with momentum. It shifted in a direction no axis could describe, disappearing from one point and reappearing 0.4 seconds later, directly in front of the Imperial flagship's bridge viewport. A distance of 7 kilometers collapsed to zero in a heartbeat. Officers recoiled. The ship loomed so close its matte hull reflected their own bridge lights back at them like an indifferent mirror. It sent no message. Activated no weapon. But the implication pressed harder than any threat. Entry achieved, without permission, without resistance. Varakesh steadied his voice. All ships, lock firing solutions. Before the command took effect, the craft vanished. Again, folding sideways, slipping through a razor-thin distortion, and reappeared beside the Imperial command carrier. Another fold placed one above the rear formation, another inside the artillery ring, another directly behind Varakesh's own vessel. The Empire's perfect crescent shattered. Ships broke alignment. Comms spiked in sudden panic. Sir, they're inside every defensive bubble. We cannot track their movement. 2 centuries. The Empire had marked humanity as a species barely a few centuries into spaceflight, scattered colonies, low-tier reactors, small fleets. But beneath the surface, beneath the visible shell, something older and larger had grown. New diagram appeared, this time showing lunar subsurface structures. Lines branched into 312 nodes, each glowing with a soft pulse the fleet had seen only during the absorption event. Luna's grid is the oldest part of our system defense, initiated 184 years ago. Its function is to absorb, redirect, or nullify hostile energy to preserve civilian zones. Today, it protected both you and us. Varakesh's officers stiffened. The humans spoke not as victims, but as custodians, protecting even their attackers from their own weapons. Another schematic emerged. Mars buried arrays, heat sinks, rail null fields, communication filters designed to prevent escalation, all interconnected. Mars joined the network 97 years ago. Its lattice prevents accidental military exchange between neighboring powers. Accidental military exchange, the tactical officer whispered. They've planned for conflicts between other species, not just themselves. The map expanded. Jupiter ignited on the display, the vast gas giant surrounded by a geometric mesh of orbiting platforms, each one reflecting energy signatures, far above Imperial capacity. The Jovian system completes the triad. Its reactors maintain system-wide stability and non-lethal intervention capability. Output differential compared to your fleet. 50-fold. 50-fold. The number cracked across the bridge like a silent blow. Varakesh steadied himself, searching for any sign of exaggeration. The readouts were consistent. The humans weren't boasting, they were reporting. The next lines came softly. We do not want war. We did not initiate contact with you for conflict. Your approach required us to activate our protocols. Required. Not desired. Not planned. Another stinger line slid across the consoles. We respond with precision, not vengeance. The transmission shifted tone, not in emotion, but in scope. Our doctrine is simple. Preserve life where possible. Intervene, only when forced. Disable instead of destroy. Leave room for correction, Varakesh's throat tightened. These words did not belong to a species scrambling for survival. They belonged to a civilization that had made peace a strategic asset. The humans continued. We have mapped your fleet's status. Repairs can be initiated once hostilities cease. Your crews are stable. Communications remain yours. We will not interfere unless further aggression occurs. The restraint was staggering. With power enough to obliterate the entire armada, humanity chose to speak gently. Then the final segment of the broadcast arrived. Slow, deliberate, declarative. Imperial Command, we ask for dialogue. Not surrender. Not submission. Dialogue. You entered our home with force. We responded with minimal necessary control. Now we seek clarity. Varakesh felt the weight shift once more. Not toward humiliation, not toward defeat, but toward an unsettling transparency. Earth was not hiding strength. Earth was revealing philosophy. The message closed with a final calm line. We will continue holding defensive posture. We do not escalate without cause. The next move is yours. The screen faded to black. Silence lingered across the Imperial. Bridge, heavy, measured, undeniable. Humanity had shaped the battlefield with restraint. They had answered violence with protection. And they had left the Empire staring into a moral mirror it had never faced. Varakesh exhaled slowly, knowing one thing with absolute clarity. Power was no longer the only force in the room. Earth had introduced something far more difficult to confront. Principle. The solar system brightened in layers, one silent activation at a time, and the Empire watched the illusion of human fragility evaporate. What they had assumed were scattered colonies and primitive outposts now revealed themselves as parts of a single architecture, ancient, deliberate, and impossibly interconnected. It began with Luna. The cratered surface glowed in thin, geometric lines, each trench and ridge forming a lattice of 312 nodes that pulsed in harmonized rhythm. The grid stretched across entire basins, down through bedrock, deep into hidden caverns the Empire had dismissed as geological scars. Now every node shimmered with the same quiet confidence humanity's voice had carried. Commander Varakesh tracked the readings. Jaw locked. Their absorption field is still active. Stronger now, the sensor officer replied. Output up by 27% since the last pulse, but the signature isn't aggressive. It's stabilizing something. Stabilizing, not escalating. Humanity wasn't tightening a fist. They were setting boundaries. Luna's lattice flashed once, subtle, like a breath. Then Mars joined in. The red planet lit along its equatorial plane, dormant infrastructures rising to life beneath rusted dust. Arrays buried for nearly a century emerged through the data feed. Antenna forests, shield harmonics, tri-boundary relay spires. Each pulse was measured at 0.002 seconds after Luna's, perfectly synchronized across tens of millions of kilometers. The tactical officer swallowed. Sir, they've linked planetary defense systems into a unified grid. Mars is amplifying the Luna pattern. Varakesh didn't blink. Continue. The Martian arrays deepened their output, each pulse spreading through the asteroid belt like ripples cast across a vast, silent sea. Objects the Empire thought were mining stations now revealed anchor nodes. Small structures placed with impossible precision across 91 distinct asteroids, forming a network more stable than any Imperial comm chain. For a moment, the entire belt seemed to breathe. A stinger line settled like a verdict. You never saw what was here. Then Jupiter awoke. The gas giant, a swirling colossus the Empire barely considered relevant, suddenly erupted with structured energy signatures. Not explosive, not unstable, controlled. Dozens, no hundreds, of orbital platforms flickered into visibility as camouflage layers peeled away. The platforms glowed with deep amber cores, each output reading dwarfing the power of an Imperial dreadnought. Reactor. Differentials confirmed, an officer whispered. The Jovian network outpowers our entire fleet by a factor of 50. The bridge fell silent. Each platform rotated in perfect formation, energy flowing between them in smooth arcs that bent along gravitational lines. They fed into a single harmonic wave, pushing outward across the system, washing past Mars, the Belt, Luna, and finally Earth. A fortress, not of walls, but of synchronized physics. Varakesh felt the truth settling across him like cold iron. This wasn't built as a weapon. His adjutant nodded slowly. No, sir, it's a system environment, a controlled space. A controlled space. Earth hadn't fortified itself with shields or guns. They had altered the battlefield itself. Space behaved differently here, more stable, more regulated, more predictable. Every hostile action the Empire took would be met by an automatic, non-lethal counter. Not because humans reacted quickly, but because the system did. The next layer unfolded, subtle and surgical. Telemetry feeds, Imperial ones, began correcting themselves. Distortion drift dropped. Navigation markers sharpened. Radiation noise flattened to near zero. Something in the grid was cleaning their data. "Sir," the sensor chief hesitated. "They're stabilizing our scanners. They're helping us navigate." Varakesh felt the humiliation twist into something stranger, something closer to awe. Humanity had not built a fortress to trap enemies. They had built a sanctuary against war. Then a final pattern formed on their displays. 3 symbols, simple aligned circles, slowly rotated. Luna, Mars, Jupiter, the triad. "Imperial fleet," Earth's voice returned, calm as ever. "You are now within a harmonized safe zone. All hostile exchanges will be suppressed. All. Damaging interactions will be neutralized. This system does not permit large-scale violence." A ripple of whispers passed across the Imperial bridge. The humans had rewritten the rules. And they were not boasting. They were informing. Varakesh stepped closer to the viewport. The black strike craft still held their positions, quiet in their sphere. But they no longer felt like the real threat. The threat was the realization that humanity had prepared for the Empire long before the Empire knew humanity existed. 2 centuries of work. 3 worlds in alignment. 1 system where conquest simply could not happen. The commander inhaled slowly as he understood the message woven into every activated line of the solar fortress. "You chose to bring war here. We chose to prevent it. And, now, for the first time, the Empire understood the scale of what stood before them. Not a species guarding a planet, but a civilization guarding an entire star." The first shift in gravity was so gentle, the Imperial bridge mistook it for engine. Drift. A soft tug, no more than 0.04 g, brushed the fleet from all directions at once. Too uniform to be natural, too precise to be accidental. Commander Varakesh steadied himself as the readings sharpened. "Localized distortion?" he asked. "The sensor?" Chief shook his head. "No, sir. System-wide and synchronized. Origin everywhere." Gravity should not have symmetry. Not like this. Then the second shift struck. Still non-lethal, still soft, but unmistakably deliberate. 0.07 g, descending from above the formation, folding under it, then sealing behind the fleet like an invisible curtain. A stinger line dropped through the command deck. You are inside their net. The black strike craft repositioned without thrust, slipping through micro-folds that made space ripple like silk. 4 of them anchored at the perimeter. 4 rose overhead. 4 drifted beneath the Imperial hulls. 12 total, forming a perfect sphere around all 43 Imperial ships. Varakesh's voice narrowed. "Shields at full!" Nothing happened. Instead, every shield registered a mild countercurrent, an equalizing push from outside, preventing the reactors from rising above 12% output. "Sir, the grid is capping our shields. Impossible. Override." "We can't. The override signal loops. Back to baseline. The system is stabilizing us, stabilizing them. Just like before." Then the real trap activated. The space between the Imperial vessels tightened, not physically, not visually, but gravitationally. Micro-wells formed at 128 points, each one no larger than a shuttle bay, but enough to influence inertia. The fleet's formation bent inward, ships forced toward the positions humanity dictated. A massive dreadnought drifted 23 meters left with no engine burn. A carrier shifted 15 meters down. Destroyers were gently nudged into alignment, like pieces on an invisible board. "Sir, we're losing positional control," an officer whispered. It's like the system is moving us, not trapping them, arranging them." Then came the EMP webs. 4 black craft pulsed in sequence. Pulse 1, soft amber. Pulse 2, thin cobalt. Pulse 3, a ripple no sensor could fully register. Pulse 4, a clean, harmonic resonance. The pulses did not strike. They connected, fine filaments of electromagnetic interference, thin as threads, invisible to naked eyes, stretched between the black craft, weaving into a net that wrapped around every Imperial ship. The readings spiked in quiet precision. Mapping. "Resonance lines," the sensor chief murmured. "Sir, each web is calibrated to our reactor frequencies. They know which circuits to suppress and which to leave untouched." And then humanity began. The first shutdown was a carrier. Engines stilled in 0.08 seconds, weapon batteries paused mid-charge, life support untouched, hull temperature unchanged, not a single crew member harmed. Second, a dreadnought, 0.09 seconds. Third, a destroyer. 0.10 seconds, fourth and fifth twin escorts. In 0.12 seconds, each shutdown moved like a quiet metronome. Varakesh stared. "Count them as they fall." 5 ships down, the web pulsed. 6, 7, 8. Another dreadnought drifted into stillness. Its weapons froze, targeting arrays locked. Harmlessly away from human bodies, for the net refused to allow any orientation that might cause harm. 11 ships offline. The gravity wells tightened, not crushing, not restraining, just guiding. As each vessel powered down, the net carried it gently into a safe drift pattern, spacing them 2.1 kilometers apart with delicate precision. 15 ships, 19 ships. 23 ships, officers whispered the numbers like a falling drumbeat. 28 disabled. The black craft pulsed again. A new layer of EMP wave rolled across the fleet, this one lighter, almost tender, disrupting weapon nodes only. 31, 36, 40. Panic rose across the deck, but panic without violence. Every time a frightened commander tried to engage thrusters, the net dampened the output to 4%, enough to maintain atmosphere, never enough to maneuver. Varakesh gripped the rail. "Why 0 casualties? Why spare us? Why this level of control?" the CEO adjutant answered softly. "Because destruction was never their intention." 41, 42. The final ship resisted for 0.4 seconds. Its reactor stabilizers humming against the web's hold, then fell silent as smoothly as the rest. 43. The entire Imperial fleet, every vessel, every gun, every thruster, was powerless, and yet no one had been hurt. Then the human message arrived. "All Imperial ships have been placed in protected drift. Your crews are safe, your reactors are safe, your lives are safe. The exercise is complete." Exercise. Varakesh inhaled slowly as the gravity wells relaxed. The fleet floated, like leaves on a windless sea. Humanity had just rewritten the meaning of control, not through annihilation, but through mercy, backed by precision. The black craft withdrew to a respectful distance, hovering in silent formation, and for the first time the Empire understood the truth. This was not a battle. This was a demonstration. The transmission arrived, without ceremony, carried on the same clean channel the humans had used since the first shutdown. No image, no face, no presence meant to dominate. Only a calm voice that sounded as if it were speaking from a room built for reason, not power. "Imperial fleet, this is Earth. Your vessels are safe. Your personnel remain unharmed. We now propose terms for withdrawal." Commander Varakesh felt every officer lean in, bracing for humiliation. Instead, the next sentence landed like a quiet disarmament. "You will not be asked to surrender. You will not be asked to yield territory. Your wounded pride is not our concern. We seek stability, not victory. No demand for tribute. No demand for reparation, not even a request for apology." Humanity spoke as if dealing with a dangerous storm, not an enemy. Varakesh felt a strange, unwelcome emotion rise in his chest, relief mixed with something sharper. The message continued. "We require only 3 actions from Imperial Command. 1. Withdraw your fleet beyond the heliopause. 2. Cease military expeditions into developing systems for 72 hours. 3. Acknowledge receipt of these terms." A pause. "You have 72 hours to comply. The clock has begun. We do not escalate unless forced." A stinger line cut the silence. Time favors those who prepare. Varakesh exhaled slowly. The terms were mild, shockingly so. No empire in history had ever been granted such a clean exit after initiating aggression. The tactical officer whispered, "Sir, they're letting us go." "No," Varakesh said quietly. "They're giving us room to choose what we become." The bridge lights dimmed as internal comms surged. Every Imperial ship, disabled but intact, began receiving encrypted messages from its own crew councils, political delegates, protective guilds. The fracture began instantly, like a fault line splitting beneath centuries of unquestioned doctrine. Ensui. One channel, a captain from the outer wing argued fiercely. "Withdraw. Restore power. Learn from this. They spared us." On another, an aristocratic commander demanded retaliation. "A trick. A test. The Empire will not kneel to a frontier species." A third voice, weary, shaken, spoke with brutal honesty. "They disabled 43 ships without touching a life support valve. If this is war, we are infants." Varakesh listened without interrupting. His officers watched him, waiting to see which faction he would empower by speaking. But he said nothing. The Empire always fractured under pressure. It was built on conquest, not unity. But never before had the fracture been quiet, logical, born not from fear but from revelation. The next wave of messages came from home. Imperial governors, advisory ministers, regional monarchs. The Emperor's own strategic council, many demanded defiance. Pride was the currency of their lineage. Pride had built their alliances, their armies, their history. But others, scientists, logistical officials, border administrators, saw the truth written in the telemetry. Their reactors dwarf ours 50-fold. Their gravity control surpasses anything in our archives. They neutralized every threat without inflicting a casualty. This is not an enemy. This is a new constant. Political pressure surged like rising heat across a sealed chamber. No one agreed. No one trusted the other. The Empire had always assumed unity came from dominance. But dominance had evaporated the moment the first beam was swallowed above the lunar surface. Varakesh finally spoke. "Open a secure channel to all ships." The bridge quieted. He did not raise his voice. "We are confronted with a civilization that holds power without cruelty. They have asked for withdrawal, not surrender, and they have given us time, not chains." He paused, letting the words settle. "We can pretend our pride outweighs this reality, or we can face the truth. The Empire has never encountered an opponent who demands nothing in return for peace. Whispers, silence, understanding. Varakesh." Continued. "I will consider Earth's terms, all of them. The factions may argue, but the choice rests with the fleet, not the council chambers at home." His adjutant exhaled, shoulders lowering. "Sir, that may fracture the Empire." "Yes," Varakesh said, "but perhaps it needed to fracture. The humans sent one final line, timed precisely on the hour. We await your decision. No further action is required. You may leave at any time." The message faded, leaving the Imperial fleet adrift in the most secure system they had ever entered. Powerless, unharmed, and for the first time in its history, confronted by a moral force stronger than its armies. Varakesh stood beneath the quiet hum of dormant consoles, knowing the next chapter would not be written by weapons, but by choices. The 72 hours had begun. The news did not leave the solar system. It detonated across the galaxy. Every passive sensor array within 5 neighboring sectors had recorded the impossible sequence. 43 Imperial warships disabled without casualties, a full power beam absorbed above the moon, and the emergence of a system-scale defense, lattice no one had ever charted. Once the Empire's long-range silence became evident, the rumor networks ignited. The first message reached Earth only 3 hours after the Imperial shutdown. "This is the Halorian Union. We request peaceful contact. We seek clarification on your non-lethal technology." Then another. "Vexari Diplomatic Cluster requesting dialogue. We recognize the solar system as controlled space." Then a flood. By the end of the first day, 17 species had requested channels, some tentative, some terrified, some deeply curious. Many had viewed the Empire as a stabilizing terror, dangerous but predictable. Now that Terra had been halted by a civilization the galaxy had barely noticed. On the Imperial Bridge, Commander Varakesh listened as reports streamed in from far beyond their borders. Worlds they once dominated now questioned doctrines. Protectorates wondered whether human intervention would extend to them. Slave worlds, still unnamed in official archives, sent encrypted messages begging to know whether humanity could break chains without bloodshed. A stinger line rose from the comm noise. A single act reshapes 1,000 maps. Earth did not answer any of the incoming requests immediately. Instead, a single universal broadcast went out, calm, precise, unmistakably human. To all observing powers, the solar system is secure. No expansion is planned. No empire is targeted. Our doctrine remains non-lethal and defensive. The transmission continued with measured clarity. We respond to threats only when forced. We do not seek dominion. We seek dialogue grounded in mutual safety. Across the Empire's disabled fleet, officers exchanged long, silent looks. The message sounded less like diplomacy and more like a boundary, a warning wrapped in courtesy. The next wave of galactic chatter was darker. If humanity can neutralize fleets this size, what happens when two empires fight near them? Will they intervene again? Should we accelerate our own gravity research? We cannot fall behind. The word traveled fast. Arms race. Political clusters across the outer spiral held emergency councils. Black budget research programs activated. Vexari Intelligence leaked a memo claiming Earth's Jovian reactors could power a continent for centuries. The Halorian Union estimated the lunar grid was at least 180 years older than humanity's public space timeline suggested. Rumors spread that Earth had hidden allies. Others believed humanity had awakened guardians thousands of years old. Some whispered of a deeper threat, something that had driven Earth to build a solar fortress over 2 centuries. Varakesh stood before his darkened display, absorbing every fragment of this new landscape. The Empire had fractured under the weight of revelation, but the galaxy was fracturing outward, each species racing to understand whether they now lived beside a quiet protector or a silent superpower. Earth sent a second, shorter message to the Imperial fleet alone. Your 72 hours continue. We will not interfere. But understand, your next decisions will affect not only you, but every watching civilization. Varakesh read the words twice. They were not a threat, not a negotiation. They were a frame. A new equilibrium had begun forming, and humanity had not seized the top of it. They had simply defined the boundary no one dared cross. In the final hours before the fleet's reactors were restored, another transmission leaked through deep band channels. Not from Earth, not from any empire. Something older, something distant. A faint signal, a harmonic pulse, a pattern that did not match any known species. The sensor chief's voice cracked. Sir, this looks like a wake signature. A wake from what? Varakesh asked. No answer came, only a soft, rising tremor in the data, like the echo of something large turning its attention toward the region of space where humanity had drawn its first line. A horizon threat. Unseen. Unnamed. Watching. Varakesh exhaled, slow and certain. The galaxy was no longer reacting to the Empire. It was reacting to Earth, and something else was beginning to react to Earth as well.